Shoot him in the mouth, splatterbrain!
Cyborg eats bullets, Jock!
What did OCP do to Officer Murphy's head? How does it work from a technical standpoint? What subtle yet fascinating details can we see in its new cybernetic anatomy? And finally, what would happen if you shot RoboCop in the mouth? This video answers these and other fascinating questions related to RoboCop. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and support the video with your activity. This means a lot for me.
Touch me.
It's cold.
Yes, I want to dedicate this video entirely to RoboCop's most iconic visual attribute, his head. We've touched on this topic briefly in previous videos related to the RoboCop universe, but now let's discuss it in more detail. Everyone remembers the most futuristic scene from the original 1987 film where Murphy removes his helmet at the steel mill, revealing his face and the mechanics of his cybernetic anatomy. Here the mechanisms of his head are lubricated with engine oil, which amplifies that futuristic feel. But probably it's not oil at all. Probably it's Murphy's synthetic blood he certainly needs for the proper functioning of the only organic part left from his former body, his brain. In the sequel and prequel, the mechanisms inside his head will be clean and dry. This suggests that the blood might have leaked through the systems due to the severe gunfire damage he sustained earlier in those scenes. First, let's recap the basics of RoboCop's head anatomy that we know from the filmmaker's comments. Yes, we've gone over it in previous videos, but not everyone may remember. When it comes to RoboCop's head, all that remains from previous Murphy is just his brain and his face, and I mean specifically the skin. No muscles, no skeletal structure. Only skin stretched over metal. According to the creators, Murphy's face was cut from his corpse and grafted onto the robotic head that now housed his brain too. OCP engineers did this to prevent him from a psychological software failure when, sooner or later, RoboCop would see his own reflection, since it was impossible to separate Officer Murphy's professional skills from his personal memories. And as we know, it worked out well. Keeping a human face also played a crucial role in RoboCop's social integration in Detroit. People love RoboCop, but you know that yourself.
They say he's got a brain. I want to see it.
While making this video, I came across a few more intriguing details on RoboCop's face from the filmmaker's comments. I once shared a theory that in the sequel, Kane's gang, while dismantling Murphy, tried and failed due to technical reasons to reach his brain. Turns out I might not have been far off, because in the original script of Part 2, it was stated that Kane's gang partially tore the skin off RoboCop's head, exposing the mechanisms of his jaw. According to the creators, after this incident, it's likely, yes, literally likely, that during reconstruction, Murphy's original face may have been replaced with a synthetic alternative. This would explain why in the prequel, Murphy's face doesn't burn when exposed to fire and actually looks different, suggesting that at some point the engineers decided to replace his former human skin with artificial one. The films never explicitly state this, but it's implied it could have happened off-screen. One way or another, even if engineers did replace Murphy's face, they at least made sure to preserve the bullet scar from Bodeker's shot to his head. Now, knowing that there's nothing but mechanisms behind Murphy's face, let's consider the enormous technical breakthrough OCP engineers achieved in preserving his human-like expression. I'll phrase it this way. Murphy's facial gestures remain fully preserved. This would imply the engineers had to develop some kind of a synthetic equivalent to human muscles. Yet, as we already know that behind his skin lies only metal and relatively crude mechanisms, it follows that his facial expressions would have to function similarly to this animatronic RoboCop puppet. This is a much more realistic option. And yet, RoboCop's facial expressions are as good as those of a living human. Yes, I understand that this is all artistic restraints, but still. This suggests that Murphy's preserved facial movements are the result of special bioelectric impulses in his skin. We've seen something similar with Automo Android, whose facial expressions are generated solely by his polymer skin, with no synthetic muscles as such. Despite having such revolutionary technologies at hand, OCP still sought other ways to commercialize their business. Because RoboCop's head, in particular the tag behind his human-like facial expressions, is the most advanced RoboCop's tech, period. It doesn't matter if the skin is biological or synthetic. And if the skin is biological, which it at least was in the first film and the first half of the second film, it would also need a blood supply technology. Yes, RoboCop does have an artificial blood supply. He uses an artificial heart for that.
I got that heart you wanted. I
said a Nissan. That's a Kanemitsu. Oh,
And the remains of Murphy's human biology require oxygen and nutrients. But talking about blood supply to the skin, these would be the smallest blood vessels and some state-of-the-art microsurgery accordingly. This way, giving Murphy artificial skin from the start would have been much simpler for OCP scientists. Of course, OCP also made a huge breakthrough in ocular prosthetics. Murphy's new eyes are artificial. Analyzing these scenes from the first film, we realized that RoboCop was initially intended to have a completely different optical system, possibly even similar to Kane's. Murphy's original eyes were discarded. However, during the construction of Robo-Murphy, the engineers decided to fully preserve the human appearance of his face and used ocular prosthetics instead. They also flawlessly recreated his teeth, tongue, and the entire mouth cavity. Now this means OCP scientists achieved a breakthrough in creating indistinguishable, human-like androids even before the Kanemitsu Corporation. So it's entirely possible that after the Kanemitsu-OCP merger in the third film, RoboCop's technological advancements were used in the development of Automo. Now, let's take a closer look at the mechanisms of Murphy's head hidden beneath his helmet. First of all, the screws securing the helmet appear to fasten into these openings, parts of Murphy's auditory system. I simply don't see any other openings for them. These auditory mechanisms seem to rotate, possibly for fine-tuning, though we've only seen it in the shots where Murphy was critically damaged. We also see these metal arcs, which I believe create some empty space between Murphy's helmet and the mechanisms inside his head. This serves two purposes. First, it is a ventilation space. There are special ventilation channels at the back of his head. Cooling is essential for the processes implanted in Murphy's brain. And the second purpose is to create a buffer space to reduce the traumatic load on RoboCop's head. There are special connectors to remove these arches. And there are also additional ports for alternative mounting configurations. One of the noticeable elements of Murphy's head is his artificial jaw, a significant part of which is hidden under his face. This is the very element that proves that mechanisms under Murphy's face are kind of an imitation of a human skeleton, which is logical, with some artificial nasal cartilage as well. Looking at Murphy's neck, we may see hydraulic mechanisms that replace muscles, though there are occasional continuity errors where Peter Weller's real neck is visible through the makeup. There are several indicators on the back of RoboCop's head to display critical failures of his neural system. There are also special ports to connect diagnostics equipment, which we saw in RoboCop 2. More than that, at the backside of his head we see quite many dismantling points. OCP engineers may use special tools and access Murphy's brain via these dismantling points if needed, though it would be quite difficult to do it with other non-specialized tools. And this is Murphy's key advantage, including over other cyborgs. His brain is insanely well protected. In fact, it is the most protected part of his anatomy. Even Kane's crew, according to the script's intent, failed to reach his brain. It is protected all around. So what happens if you shoot RoboCop in the mouth? The filmmakers also answered this question. In general, nothing happens. Well, not much to be exact. Same as if you were to shoot, say, the Terminator in its mouth. In most cases, we're talking cosmetic damage to RoboCop's artificial teeth and mouth cavity. If the bullet reaches Robo's artificial digestive system, yes, he has one, it may also create some complications. Depending on the extent of the damage, it may impair the operation of the jaw and articulatory system in general. In a more severe case, it may cause visual system failure, but in most cases it will not cause any significant damage to his critical organ, his brain. RoboCop will be okay. Hope you learned something new today about what OCP did to Officer Murphy's head. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel, give it a like, comment, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Bye!